And without any objection, I'm going to let Senator Johnson kick us off with questions.
Thanks, Senator Moody. I supplied plastic packaging materials to the medical device industry for about 30 years. And, fully understand good manufacturing process, GMP's benchmark of that is traceability. We need to know, what rail car, what box of resin produced that roll of sheet stock that went into packaging that particular medical device, okay? Now, that's just for packaging material. So, Dr. Gray, does the FDA not require that level of traceability on drugs? I mean, things that we actually put in our bodies versus just a package that surrounds a medical device?
My understanding is within the facility, they have requirements and GMP requirements like you're talking about. So the manufacturer itself does have to trace lots and things from its suppliers. But, and Mike can help me with this one, but when the hospitals receive the drugs,
They don't have the information, but
they don't have the information.
Yeah,
The buyers don't have the information.
So does the FDA require that traceability back to the precursor chemicals, to the API, to the actual compounding of the drug, to the marketer?
So my understanding is API, yes. Precursor chemicals, no, is my understanding. At least, and I'm not 100% sure on that, but
So anybody who can answer that question, I mean, how critical would it be for us to know where the precursor chemicals come from, or is it okay just to focus on API? Dr. Schodelmeyer.
Yeah, certainly it's important to know where it came from for purposes of, is it quality? Is it a product that we want to put in human bodies in America? But it's also important to know, to see how dependent we are on specific sources of supply and countries of supply. So they may be putting quality product in there, but if we find that 30, 40, 50% of our API supply is from China,
okay, I got that, but again, so I understand the supply chain issue, the precursor chemical. What about a quality issue? I mean, do we need to know what that, where that precursor chemical came from? Or can we do the quality check on the API before it gets compounded into a drug?
Well, I would describe it this way. A lot of that is based on voluntary compliance with the Continuous Good Manufacturing Practices Act. It's not required, and FDA doesn't. It's not like a meat packing plant where they inspect everybody, piece of meat.
Mr. Ganio, you want to answer this again?
Sure.
So it is not required by the FDA?
The key starting materials, no. And to answer your question about quality, I'd be less concerned about the quality and more the national security vulnerabilities associated with it. So the API is tested by manufacturers. They will confirm that what they receive from an API is suitable for production. Anything that's up to that should be okay from a quality perspective, but the vulnerabilities that need to be revealed are important.
We had the 2008 heparin contamination issue. Mm-hmm. Have we done anything to address what went wrong there?
Scientifically, United States Pharmacopoeia revised the monograph for that, so to make sure that testing and over-sulfated chondroitin sulfate would be detected in the assay. From a national security standpoint, that should address if the GMPs are being followed and record keeping is being followed.
So if we, Mr. Colville, you mentioned that U.S. generic drugs are about 33% less expensive than in other countries, first world nation countries. Why is that? Is it just greater competition, or are there rules and regulations in place in those countries that increase that cost of the drug?
It could be a result of incentives in the market. So what are the purchasers incentivized to value? I think in the U.S. there's a emphasis on low cost, which is important, of course, but there's not enough emphasis on other things that are important too. Reliable availability, quality, everything else that goes into the full value proposition for these products.
In general, generic drugs are pretty cheap, correct? Right. I mean, where we have problems with high drug prices in the patentable drugs, until they go off patent and become generic. So when we're talking about, and I think, what Senator Scott is proposing, labeling, I think that's an incredibly important first step. I think all the witnesses are saying that as well. But, there may be rules and regulations in terms of quality and testing and statistical sampling and GMPs and following those things and making those available as well. That would add a price to that. Anybody want to opine in terms of, would that increase prices by 33%? Which still, when you look at the total drug buy in the U.S., we don't have extremely expensive healthcare here because of drugs. It's a component of it, but it's a small component. So if you want, I personally think most consumers would pay a little bit more to be assured of quality, so they don't die from a heparin contamination or something like that. And anybody want to opine in terms of what the right rules and regulations and laws to ensure quality, how much that would increase the price of generic drugs? Would it be the 33%? Would it double it? Mr. Ganio, you look like you want to answer.
I couldn't give you an exact number. That would vary by manufacturer. But as you mentioned, and as I mentioned in my testimony, the two supply chains, there's instances where we probably don't pay enough for our generic drugs, and this is the result, a questionable quality. But all we have to value when we buy drugs is the price. Everything is pass-fail, which is clearly not sufficient. So if additional information about quality is made available, then purchasers would have a reason to spend 10%, 15% more. We conducted a survey in 2023 and found our members are willing to spend about 10 to 15% more on drugs. You have to look on the other side, the supply chain issues, the shortages, what they cost, over almost $900 million in labor expenses alone, according to a report from Vizient, a group purchasing organization. Our research also shows increased costs of drug supply chain concerns. So if you make that trade-off, pay a little bit more for guaranteed supply chain high-quality drugs, it theoretically could pay for itself.
By the way, I will say that having been a manufacturer who had to follow GMP, got ISO audits every 6 months, it costs a little bit more, but not that much more. What you end up being is just a far better manufacturer. You have high quality, you have higher level customer service, greater reliability, less scrap. So I wouldn't believe any manufacturer, any of these marketers saying, well, it's going to increase our costs dramatically. It really shouldn't. It's just good manufacturing practices that ought to be insisted on. Again, I really appreciate what Senator Scott is doing here with these hearings. Thank you.